expiring military leases to Aloha Stadium. A lot to cover with Hawaii Governor Josh Green.
He'll join us for the full hour. Spotlight Now starts now.
You're watching Spotlight Now with Ryan Kalei-Suchi and Yunji Denise on Hawaii News Now. Have questions or comments for our guests? Join the conversation in our Facebook live stream. Spotlight Now, where Hawaii comes to talk.
Well, thanks for tuning in here to Spotlight Now on Hawaii News Now. We're going to get with our conversation started with Hawaii Governor Josh Green in just a few moments. We always want to encourage those of you who are tuning in online to engage in the conversation. You can add your questions for the governor in the comment section on Facebook. We'll be tracking it throughout the show.
We always know that he likes your questions as much as we do. Let's get straight to our first and only guest for the hour today, and that is Governor Josh Green. Thanks for being here.
Thank you.
I want to start with the news that we have been covering. Of course, that's the tsunami and sort of some quarterbacking, if you will, about what went right, what went wrong. We had Ed Sniffen on here recently, and he was talking about changes that they're going to be doing at the DOT's level. From your perspective, how did that go?
Well, overall, very well. We're so grateful that we didn't have damage from the tsunami itself. You know, there was a time during the aftermath of the earthquake, which occurred in Kamchatka. It was big. It was like 8.6 on the Richter magnitude. That's a huge earthquake. It could have been a 6 to 10 foot wave. Ultimately, it was much smaller, and we kind of dodged a bullet. But a 10-foot tsunami, had that happened, would have caused unbelievable damage. As to the response, the responsibility of me and the team, and they did a great job, is to make sure people are prepared for the worst and to get to safety. So I'm grateful that everyone, participated, listened, took it seriously, and then we didn't have the disaster that would have taken months of cleanup. The incredible thing is the world was watching, so you have to be very professional. Of course, people were frustrated that they ended up in traffic, but consider the alternative, not taking it seriously, staying, say, in a dangerous place, and then a wave comes in 6, 8, or 10 feet. We've had tsunamis that killed many people over the years, one back in the 60s, one back in the 40s. So you can't take it for granted. Going forward, I've asked Ed and the DOT to come up with plans to either stagger the departures, which will be difficult because when you tell someone there could be a tsunami that could affect where they live, or if their kids are home alone, or goodness knows what property they're worried about, everyone's going to try to go home. Although we don't have to. If you can go up over 4 stories, you're going to be safe. And so we'll reemphasize that. We also give people, the warnings, 3 hours out, 2 hours out, 1 hour out, half hour out. And so people know when the wave would come. We have good technology in the oceans. So for that reason, I'm gratified. I will tell you, a lot of people were watching. A lot of interest happens when you're talking about Hawaii. The Maui wildfire was a big example. Also, it was prime time in the East Coast. It was at peak TV time. There were over 7 billion impressions between social media, TV, news, and print. 7.34 billion people touched us one way or another to look at what might happen with the tsunami. That tells you how interested they are in our beautiful state, and it also tells you that we have to be on our game.
7 billion? That's as many people as are alive on the planet.
Yeah.
That seems like that's quite a lot.
Yeah, so those impressions are probably spread out over about 2 billion people. So the average person had 3 or maybe 4 impressions that they were watching, checked a news story online, watched our excellent coverage, which you guys did, and the other networks. They are very interested, especially after what we experienced with the Maui wildfire. So we have to, like I said, be at the top of our game. And I think though there was traffic, I was glad that we were ready. And that's why we do these kind of dry runs, rehearsals. We do a lot of that. They're called tabletop exercises, so that if there's a tsunami or if a hurricane comes, we're super ready. And going forward, I'm always going to err on the side of readiness, just to be safe.
Well, one of the things that we talked about with Director Sniffen was just access routes that could be made more available, just different routes, because, with this last instance, we had the luxury of time. If there isn't maybe as much time or hours, educating the public seems to be a big part about this piece too, in terms of where to go, how to prepare, and who essentially needs to prepare. How do you think the state can do a better job of helping to educate people about how to be ready for things like this?
Well, I think everyone needs to be able to see a map of where they can go and where they need to go. It's true, Ryan, if God forbid we had an event near to us, near to Hawaii, an earthquake, or if we ever lost part of the shelf off of the Big Island, that's one of our concerns. Like if part of the volcanic shelf slid into the ocean, it would cause a tsunami of epic proportion that would hit Oahu very quickly. So we have to be able to get out of the way. One thing people should know is if you get about 3/4 of a mile inland, they were telling me, these were the experts, that you will be safe under almost all circumstances. So even just getting away from the shoreline is going to be important. I would caution people, there are a few individuals that went out and swam and tried to surf because they thought it was cool. You will be killed if a tsunami comes and you're out there swimming. And we'll have to go find you for your relatives. And so that's not so good. But there are lots of things that we will update people on, particularly those evacuation routes if it's going to be closer. Most of the time, we're going to have this long period of wave monitoring. And we get several signals throughout the Pacific, and that's helpful. But like I said, you could get some kind of event much closer to us. And in that case, we're going to have to activate super fast.
The tsunami warning obviously made national headlines. Something else that made national headlines was possible political ambitions for you and your political future. NBC News reporting some sideline conversation that they had with you on the continent, talking about potentially a presidential run. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Sure. Just so people are totally clear, I'm absolutely running for governor next year for a second term. It is the most gratifying responsibility I've ever had. I'm so grateful to the people of Hawaii to let me serve as governor. So Jamie and I are completely committed to our state. Hard stop. Okay, so it's governor, and I would like to serve all the way through a second term if people will have me. Having said that, how this arose was I was at the National Governors Association meeting in Colorado. There were 13 Republicans, 7 Democrats, and I was working hard. I don't treat those things as vacations. These are hard-working events for me, and I was working on a big health policy. That's the $50 billion that's coming for the Rural Health Fund. I was helping to educate my colleagues, all these other governors, on exactly how to get this money, what it will be used for in the rural healthcare setting, how it will offset some of the effects of the president's bill. So they see me working very hard. And then right at that moment, a poll came out, a national poll that showed that I was, I think, the 5th most popular governor in the country, which again is very gratifying. And I thank everyone who's, a part of those kind of surveys. It's humbling to be considered, popular in your state and in the country. So the combination of working hard and kind of leading a lot of other governors. I mean, I'm the only physician governor, so I have a little extra capacity in some areas. They saw that, and then they saw that poll, and so they thought, okay, this guy must be running for president. Truth be told, I suspect that I will be supporting some other governor for the presidency. One of my colleagues who I'm very fond of, you've got Governors Shapiro, Moore, Bashir. There are others out there that I have developed a close relationship with, and I think it's a heck of a lot more likely they'll become president rather than me. But I should be Hawaii's governor if people will have me, and it's important because we got a lot more to do. Like the tsunami work we have to do, we have to continue to help Maui heal. We've set into motion a lot of great policies which we can elaborate on, like the tax breaks, but there's so much other work, getting our housing our housing inventory all up and ready for the next generation. There's too much work to do for me to worry about higher office. This is higher office for me, which is governor.
Well, talking about the national level, we are seeing a lot of things that are obviously transpiring with governors in specific cities, with National Guard being called in to areas like D.C., and some resistance being pushed back by governors, including Gavin Newsom from California, who has been very vocal about what the Trump administration is doing. As you look at the national level and the conversations that you're having with your fellow colleagues and governors of other states, how do you navigate through all of these changes while trying to balance having this relationship that you say that you're trying to talk with members of the Trump administration to help support Hawaii, but recognizing there are some fundamental disagreements that are happening on a national level?
Yeah, I figured out the way you deal with the president's administration and kind of keep your values intact, which is you have to be direct. The president does not like to have personal conflicts, and he doesn't like to be called out. Now, other guys who are actually actively running for president or who are in a deep conflict with him because their states are interfacing so often, they end up in this kind of back and forth, which becomes very combative and unfortunately pretty destructive. For me, I spoke directly to the president. I acknowledged that we have strong differences of opinion and even different values to a degree. The difference in values between Hawaii and Ohana and how we go about our multicultural experience here is so different than the way that they are describing their governance style that I said to him, we're going to be different. How shall I manage this so that we can still do things together? I shared with you once before, I think the president said, look, just don't mention me. You can say what you have to about my Secretary of Health or HUD or what have you, but don't mention me and we'll be fine. And that's what I took to heart. So for me, my values are like getting people access to health care, making sure our vaccination programs are intact. I speak up on those matters, but I don't single out the president if we have a disagreement. I keep it at the secretary level, and also I'm willing to work together. So I did meet with RFK Jr., for example, for just under an hour when I was over at the National Governors meeting, and we have really, a chasm of difference between us as far as public health policy goes, but we did agree on things like pesticide use around schools or hospitals, processed foods. He's right about those things. So we found some common ground. I will tell you, it's in general to our great benefit if I'm not in an open conflict with the administration, because I'm sure we're going to talk at some point during this hour about the military leases. If they were to take the full-on aggro approach to states, which they're doing in some cases, states lose. Almost always. The courts will maybe help you a little bit, but probably not. And then a state is left without a compromise, without some capacity to fight for its values. Maybe I should mention, the military leases, right? The Secretary of the Navy came. His name is Secretary Driscoll, Dan Driscoll. Nice enough guy. I liked him. He is definitely very close to the Vice President Vance. He came in and said, look, we have a national security concern. These leases haven't been done for more than a decade. They should have been done. The president wants them done. And I said, okay, I hear you. What do you have in mind, to be respectful? He said he wants them done quickly, in just a few weeks. I'm obviously summarizing some very long meetings. And I said, well, we're going to have to make sure of a few things. One, that people hear what we're talking about. If you say it's a national security concern, and if ultimately we're going to do leases of some sort or a land swap of some sort anyway, it's my job to get Hawaii the best deal while preserving our values, meaning we protect the land. We make sure that things like Makua Valley returns to Hawaii, that we get monies to help remediate the weaponry that's been used there, the bombs and so on. I also want to see extra concessions. I want to see housing come. I'm asking the military to build 5,000 houses, for example, for the soldiers so that it takes down some of the pressure on us. I'm asking the military to contribute to our energy challenge and our energy solutions, extra geothermal resources so that we can lower the cost of energy. They were very accommodating when they saw that I wasn't going to just try to punch them in the nose, and instead would work through these issues. Now, I know we have environmental concerns. I know the Board of Land and Natural Resources has rejected their environmental impact studies, but keep in mind, at any moment, if they truly wanted to, they could take the land. They could eminent domain it from us, and we would get nothing. So I'm going to make sure that we have a very favorable deal on lands being returned to us, lands that I can then give to the Hawaiian people, to DHHL perhaps, lands that we can use as a buffer around the bases so that there's no contamination risk, lands that we might be able to build housing on, and then all these other projects which I have in mind. So I expect us, as long as we keep it cordial, to come up with some kind of solution, and we can avoid what would be the hammer, which they could definitely bring down on us like they're bringing down on Maine or California. There are also collateral benefits. I am seeing a lot of help from the Department of Health and Human Services. You wouldn't think that would have worked out, but we worked out some of our differences. I'm going to still fight them on vaccinations, for our people. It worked for us. It works for children in general. But I am going to try to find compromise on other public health matters, and for that, we're going to see much more than our share of that $50 billion, which will help us with our hospitals. That's how I approach it. I've decided that we need more people that are trying to unite us than divide us in this country. And that's just my approach. I'm sure some of my detractors might say, hey, you're being too accommodating. The truth is, I want health care for our people. I want the land to come back to us in a favorable way, not an unfavorable way. I want vaccinations. And my best bet is to kind of navigate these relationships that way.
I mean, I'm curious on how you actually do that effectively, knowing that at any moment they could say, well, too bad, eminent domain, we get it, and you get nothing, right? You know that that's a possibility. So how do you know what to ask for? And when you're doing these negotiations, what would you say are the top priorities for you? Because there's a laundry list of things that we could ask for. We could ask for landfill space. We could ask for housing. Yes. We could ask for a return of lands, decontamination. I mean, the list is long. What are the top, let's say, 2 or 3 priorities in that negotiation?
Sure. So there's 2 important questions here. Number one is, how do you navigate a circumstance when one of the negotiators definitely have the upper hand on you? Well, first I explain very clearly that it could be counterproductive for the federal government to take our land, because everyone saw what happened on Mauna Kea when there was a dispute over land and dispute over the process for the 30-meter telescope. There was protest, and it was impossible to move forward. And I explained to the Secretary of the Army and to all of their team that if one worked that way and just took from us, it could set them back decades, because they wouldn't be able to train, because there would be mass protests and the bases would be blocked, and that's not in their interest either, which is to say our national interest. We have to train our soldiers somewhere, and it's extremely likely that they're going to be training here because it's important. It's important for the Indo-Pacific. It's important that we participate as Americans, but it's also important that we stick to our Hawaii values. Okay, so there's that. And I told them, from a practical standpoint, you'd be making a mistake to simply do a taking. Okay, so they get it. They're smart enough to understand for sure that I can give them some decent advice. Now, as to the list, the way I'm framing it, and we have a ton of experts with us from military generations past, but who have been Hawaii residents for a long time, people on my staff, experts from the environmental side, the congressional delegation. We have a must-have list, which is a must-have trade that is favorable to us from a land standpoint. They have to use a smaller footprint. We have to have lands returned to us. They have to accommodate, the cleaning, the purification of the land after using a lot of the land as, a base where it was training and dropping bombs and so on. They have to help us with that. They have to help us with our water, wherever the water could have been compromised. That's also very important. So there's these must-haves. I include Makua Valley, I think, as a symbolic must-have. I think that's necessary, even though the land itself is going to have a long way to go to be remediated. But those are must-haves. And then also must-haves are some help and support with housing, because we have a housing crisis. And so I put that in the category of must-have also. And finally, we go into the want-to-have, which I think we will also get, which is some support for energy. There is a big argument going on right now about renewables, where they're pulling back on the tax breaks for solar, for example, and wind. But they are interested in doing geothermal. They're also interested in doing nuclear power, which is really not our space, to be frank. So that is not on the table from my standpoint, because for one, it takes a 2/3 vote of the House and Senate to authorize it, and second, I don't think there's been any consensus on nuclear for Hawaii. There might be a few people that write in and say it'd be great, but to be frank, that's kind of a bridge too far for us right now. So we might do more geothermal. I might be able to get some significant concessions on safety and fire protection, putting wires underground, which is an energy appropriation. So there's a lot that I'm negotiating, and what I expect is they will ask us for a memorandum of understanding, a draft in the next few weeks. I will then take it out to the public to get extra input on these kind of want to have. There's some dream haves too, I will tell you. I would love to have the Federal Detention Center given to the state of Hawaii. I'm asking for that on January 1st, 2029. We'll see how they respond. I would love to have a lot of things that you could imagine. I'd love to have extra transportation money, and so I'm going to make some overtures for that for our state. But people will give feedback. Some people will say, hey, don't do any deal. I understand. I respect that. But the truth is, because they have the capacity to eminent domain the land and cause a terrible pile up as far as function in Hawaii, we can't do that really. And I think that by the end of the calendar year, we will have input from the people. We will have some understanding that they have to honor our land, and we'll probably end up working this out because we don't have many other options.
I want to bring up something that you had mentioned, and that is what's happening with some of the state's aggressive sustainability goals. By 2045, the state has had this target for some time now, but with the changes from the Trump administration and some of these tax credits as well as federal funding, that could make things a little more difficult for the state in order to achieve those things. How do you work around that, knowing that this goal has been set by the state, yet a lot of it relied on what support the federal government was also providing? How are you navigating through some of those energy efficiency goals that the state has set forth?
Yeah, that's a tough problem for us right now because we even advanced some of our calendar goals for the neighbor islands recently with an executive order that I wrote to move up the date to get fully renewable on Big Island and Maui and Kauai, which, as you know, is really close. Kauai has done an extraordinary job ahead of schedule. What I think is going to happen, and I was kind of playing some three-dimensional chess 6 months or a year ago, was we have to be open to other energy modalities. And as a bridge, just as a bridge, that's why I've proposed some LNG. Now, long term, after 2045, I don't want us to be reliant on any liquid natural gas. But I don't think that we should close any door categorically because LNG would decrease our overall carbon consumption and decrease our costs, and I could still get the tax breaks from the federal government if I have a private partner that invests in some of the infrastructure. In a perfect world, I would much prefer to purely do solar, wind, and geothermal. But if there's not going to be enough resource there with tax breaks, we could see that dry up. And so I was already proposing an alternative route, bridge, to get us to the renewable goals. And look, there are going to be other administrations. Like I said, probably one of my buddies who's another governor is going to be president at some point, and he or she are going to be very responsive to Hawaii's needs. If I'm telling them as governor, help us more now again with our solar needs, help us more with our geothermal needs. So presidents come and go. Our long-term goals are steady. I hope that we can do a lot more geothermal because that's one overlap that the federal government's in support of. And when I met with the Secretary of Energy, they were very supportive of that. And now that I have these other deals in the works with the Army, with the Secretary of Transportation, there's some real possibilities to help us. I can't turn away from opportunities because, as you kind of were alluding to, we could then slip on our goals or prices could continue to go up, and that's an affordability problem for our people.
I want to get to the green fee in a minute, but sort of related to this energy question, there has been this idea floated around of getting rid of the Trans-Pacific cruise ships and just allowing those that go to the neighbor islands. Cruise liners, represent a very small portion of our tourism population, but they have an outsized impact when it comes to the environment. Do you think we should get rid of those?
I think the market should bear that out. I think that if the cruise ships want to come here and there is a market for it, it's good tourism. We also just included some of the tax revenues from the cruise ships into our green fee, which is going to be very helpful for us on many levels. I'm sure we'll dive more into that. But having said that, if we can get just as much activity, tourism activity here within, between the islands, it's fine by me. I'm not I'm not a strategist for the cruise ship folks. All I know is that, they don't occupy hotel rooms and they do bring people who spend dollars here. But they are included in the climate impact fee or the green fee now, and that's going to help us.
Okay, let's talk about the green fee and how you plan to use that money. When we've talked to climate experts, they say you actually need $400 to $500 million a year to actually do the kind of climate impact mitigation that we really need. But $100 million is, it's a fantastic start, right? Yeah. So given all the cuts we're seeing at the federal level, we had Dr. Chip Fletcher in here recently, and he was talking about all the cuts to SOEST. Doug Simons was in here from the observatories talking about their cuts. How do you make sure that this money goes to where it needs to be and doesn't, try to shore up some of those activities, because that does have a climate impact as well? Yeah,
there's a lot to do. So let me frame how this fee is going to work. Okay, I'll remind people it is for the most part going to come from visitors. It's $3 for every $400 you spend at a hotel or an Airbnb. That's 0.75%. So if you're staying at a hotel and the room rate is $400, you'll pay an extra $3. So it's not going to have too big an impact. So people are going to still come, I'm sure. The monies we'll generate will be about $100 million per year, but we will also have the capacity to do bonds. So for every $4.5 million that comes in, we can do $100 million of bond, which means that if we bonded out 18 million of the 100 million, so this portion out of the full 100 million, that would bring an extra $400 million for large projects. For example, let's say someone wanted to do a big solar array on the Big Island. That could be a project that we did to help make, our goals. Let's say someone decided that we had to deal with the Aloha and it was going to be a couple $1 billion, but they needed, say, $200 million per year. We could assign, in that case, $9 million of the green fee, bond out $100 million each year, and do a big project for Mayor Blangiardi, who I'm super fond of. I'm fond of all the mayors, for big projects like that. Or a major highway, for example, that for some reason isn't on the STIP. That's the state priority program with 80-20 match from the feds. We could decide, well, environment is taking that road in Maui, and we have to keep that open for safety, security. We could use that and again do a bond. So we will have the capacity to get to $500 million very quickly, and those bonds then are out over 20 years. They pay for themselves. That's the nature of the investment. So what I'm going to tell you, I don't know if this is a scoop or not, but I think I've kind of hinted at it. We have an excellent environmentalist who's going to lead the charge, and I met with him today, Jeff Michelina, who was the head of Blue Planet, who has super bona fides on environmental protection and is so committed to sustainability. He's going to lead the charge. There'll be a team of about 9 people that will be on this council. We're calling it the Green Fee Council for now. And then they're going to have public meetings. They're going to bring in people's input. They're going to cast a wide net of suggestions that people might make for nonprofits to do projects, for bonds to be done for the different counties, to support some critical programs. Today I spoke to Jeff and I said, maybe we should commit ourselves to supporting the work on Mauna Loa, the climate work that deals with global warming. And so I put that in his ear. Needless to say, I'm going to weigh in on this, but I want everyone to weigh in because I can't imagine walking away from our climate awareness, especially when Hawaii is in many ways at the tip of the spear on this matter. So there are some things that we will take on that are, I think, responsibilities to mankind, and there's other things that will be very local, like perhaps planting native species, helping Moku'ula, on Maui. I think we should do some bonds and restore that waterway as a gesture of solidarity with the people in Lahaina, and also bring water back, because that's been a challenge for us as a people. We've been in conflict over water use on Maui. So there's so much good that can come from it, but if we took about a quarter of that $100 million every year and bonded, there's your $500 million in big projects.
Really quick, on the Jeff Michelina and this council, is this a cabinet position? Is this a volunteer position? What's the nature of this position?
Yeah, Jeff is, so he's going to be working in collaboration with the Hawaii Executive Council, the HEC, and the position is funded under that, so it doesn't even take any money away from the green fee. The team of other people are going to be volunteers. I won't be surprised if people like Chip Fletcher and others are definitely major contributors to the recommendations. I have seen the list of names. We're going to announce that, I think, on Thursday, the full list. These are people that helped us pass the green fee, people that fought for the bill, that had been working on it for several years before we finally got it passed. So I want their input because they were studying it so closely. The 3 buckets of money, just so people remember, a third of it's going to go toward environmental protection, kind of generalizing here, okay? A third of it to environmental protection. That means like protecting flora and fauna, the shared environment, the sustainable environment. The second third of the money is for disaster preparedness, dealing with climate change, dealing with disasters that could come, like the wildfires or the impact of tsunamis or hurricanes. And then the third piece is for sustainable tourism, where we've lost our shoreline, where there's erosion, where we're losing beach parks, to make sure that we have a very ecologically sound plan for our tourist industry, which does need support, and they supported the bill in the end. So those are the 3 buckets, and everyone's going to come together. There will be a website so people can see number one, what we're talking about, two, how much money's come in, three, where the money goes out. I hope that it will be publicly broadcast, these meetings. Whoever would like to do that, I think it would be terrific, because people want to see these monies go to the right place. And so we'll be super transparent.
Okay, we are a half an hour through, and that means it's time for a quick break. You're watching Spotlight Now. A lot more to get into with the governor, including the future of Aloha Stadium. We'll be right back.
Welcome back to Spotlight Now as we continue on our conversation with Governor Josh Green. We want to switch gears here now and talk a little bit about what's happening in the tourism sector. A lot of changes happening, obviously, to the Hawaii Tourism Authority. You've recently named members to the now advisory board of the HTA. I'm wondering if you can talk a little bit about specifically how you envision the role of this advisory board now that they've sort of lost their power, for a lack of a better word. They're more in this advisory role. You know, how is this going to all work, and what do you see as their main responsibility?
Sure. So the way it's going to work is the legislature passed a bill, which I signed, which allowed us to kind of recreate this as an advisory board. They have one most important job, which is to find us the CEO, the president and CEO of the Tourism Authority. And that's going to be very meaningful for us because we're in transition, as everyone knows. So they need to get us a new president CEO, and they need to do it somewhat soon. Whether it's a person that bridges to the long-term solution or not, that'll be up to them. But they're going to advise and give a name, and then that's got to be essentially ratified by the Senate. So we're going to get some new leadership, and I'm pleased about that. I wanted a group of as I shared with you before, a group of advisors that really worked together. We had great people before, but there was some conflict. I did keep a couple people. I kept 4 of them back that were on before, like Chris West. We had another person, Lisa Paulson, James McCauley, Kim was on there. So 4 out of the, I guess, 11 or 12 stay on. 8 new people, all who have been in industry or have a significant cultural knowledge to apply, but they won't be fighting. They'll be all working in the same direction. Then they will also give me and Jimmy Tokioka, who's our DBED director, constant advice on what they think the market needs, what we ought to be doing for sustainable tourism. I take this kind of advice very seriously. When people are on boards, whether they're formalized boards or informal boards, I respect them because they put extra personal time in it. They have to share, information about their past and their assets, and it's a serious thing. But it'll be less of them deciding which contracts to do. That will be reserved for the CEO, the president, CEO, and the director. And then I have already given them some direction, which is I want more film tourism. That's very important to me, and sports tourism. These are areas where I think we can capitalize very well. Chief of War, which is extraordinary, and I hope everyone watches it. Jason is doing an incredible job with his team, with Pa'a and others. It's showing Hawaii in an extraordinary light. I mean, it's so beautiful. If this goes well, if the show continues to get good reviews and has high ratings, I'm going to make a move to bring some extra resources so that more than half of it is filmed in Hawaii. Good for our workforce, good for training the next generation of filmmakers, great for writers, probably extraordinary for our state. So film tourism, sports tourism, and I want them to follow my vision a little bit more. Remember, I inherited the Tourism Authority Board from previous governors, which is okay, but it's time now after about 3 years for me to fully put my impression on all of what we do in government while still getting input from people.
It is notable, though, that the 2 board chairs, Mufi Hanneman and Tara Poe, are not on that list. I mean, was that intentional? What were those conversations like?
Yeah, it was time for them to move on a little bit. Todd's just an incredible guy. He's done such great work as a builder in the state. He was a councilman who I love. So total respect, But it got really heated with factions, and it was the factions and the conflict which was distracting. And that was not Todd's fault. It's not anyone's fault, really, but people are, of strong opinions when there's a lot of resource around. And Mufi, dear to me and the family, Jamie and I are really close to Mufi. We do a lot of charitable work together for Jamie's church, for the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. This is important to us. The relationship's important. But it is not a secret that the director of DBED was in some conflict with different parts of the board, and I don't think we need that distraction. It's hard enough for us to compete with other, destinations. It's hard for us to, manage some of the expectations with a smaller budget than many would like for advertising. And so I just had to calm everyone down and say, you know what, thank you guys. After 2.5 years, we're going to make some changes. The legislature really wanted to change. Remember, there was talk about actually dissolving the whole tourism authority totally, and I said, no, let's not go that far. Let's just change out the board. Believe me, Mufi and Todd and others are going to still give me an earful when they want to because they have a lot of experience. But this new board will probably be more collegial, and I'm going to get a president in the near future that knows the direction I want to take Hawaii.
Let's talk about one of the other things that you had mentioned, and that was film within this structure of tourism and moving forward. Obviously, Chief of War and the success that it's having has reignited the conversation, the success of Lilo and Stitch as well. But I want to ask specifically about how you see this Hawaii being competitive in this industry, because what specifically are you looking for in terms of the amount for the tax credit, and how do we stay competitive with other locations like New Zealand, where a majority of this show was filmed, that's not going to counter and try to get, counter what the state offers? What do you think is an appropriate way to stay competitive, and what number would you be looking at?
Well, I think we have to increase the tax credit at least significantly, probably $20 million a year, but we'll see. That is up to the legislature. But there's more than just the tax credit that we can do. Also, we can add some studios. I think that if we add some film capacity and some sound studios, we're thinking on the Big Island in partnership with DHHL, where we have a lot of land, where there's a desire to have other industries. That could be very good. We would definitely ask for monies both from Hollywood and from the elites there and the investors there to match us, but we have capacity, so we could do some in-kind work, and I think that would be good because we're hoping actually to train the next generation of filmmakers from the Hawaiian community where there has been higher unemployment and other challenges that we would like to remediate with great opportunity. So that is a big deal for us. The other thing is there is revenue that comes in from successful shows, and it looks to me like Chief of War is going to be killing it for Apple. I did have some private meetings with the leadership at Apple when I was on my travels. It's one of the things I'm able to do is bring these folks to these meetings. And so I'm watching the ratings and reviews very carefully to make sure it's going to be a good investment for us. That's how we'll like to approach it. But we do have that capacity. Now, having said all of that, I'm also intending to enhance our incentives for cultural films that definitely touch Hawaii. Now, I loved the recent movie, The Fantastic Four, okay? They got some part of the tax credit for doing editing here. Look, man, I went to that movie twice. I took Sam there this last weekend. It's awesome. However, I would prefer to be investing in movies, whether they're done by, one of the major studios or Apple. I'd like them to be about Hawaii or here in Hawaii. And so we're hopeful that we can get kind of a carve-out for culturally relevant Hawaii-based film. And I think that that's going to be something that will be easy to sell to our citizens. All of these things are in play because over time we're going to see more Lilo and Stitch movies. We're going to see multiple seasons of Chief of War. And ultimately we will be, if we're providing a subsidy, providing it directly for employment for our workers in the film industry. So I'm very high on this right now. But we will make sure that we do the full economic analysis so that it comes out good for us. And, I will have conversations to make sure we get the best deal from Apple, the best deal from Paramount, and so on. Because, yes, we're competing with other countries. And they should be committed to American film sites when they can. I will note a lot of the other states are now pulling out of the deals because sometimes they don't necessarily see the benefit. There recently was a pullback from Georgia and interesting California on some of these credits. But we are in a unique situation because Hawaii is so branded that you can't do some of the things in most locations that you have to do in Hawaii with that singular exception of New Zealand. And so we'll work that out.
I love the idea of the big island. I think Ryan and I are a little partial to that. Let's talk about another big infrastructure project. In addition to these film studios, obviously you are shepherding the stadium. Yes. We did see that the cost estimate has gone up now by about $50 million, and the timeline has shifted forward at least 1 year. How confident are you that this is actually going to go as planned? I think when we think about the stadium, a lot of people see a lot of analogies with rail, and there's a lot of mistrust when it comes to big projects like this.
Sure. Well, rail is getting built. And I will bring some extra monies to rail from the federal government. That's my expectation. So it's happening too slowly, I admit, and that's a concern. But projects in the islands do take a long time. I'm not making an excuse. They just do. The stadium, we inherited, our administration, a pretty crummy early hand because there was animosity between the sites, whether we would do it at Halawa or we would do it at the campus. There's not enough parking at the campus, and there has been a long-standing desire to have a dynamic entertainment district. That's what the community voted for. I was reminded several times by Senator Wakai, who's a dear friend. And so I just felt we shouldn't change what the community asked for. Will it cost more? Yes. Will that cost be borne by Hawaii taxpayers? Hopefully not, because I do know that they have some very advanced discussions with investors from the mainland to help pay for the stadium and the district in general. There are a lot of things to share here in a moment, which I will be happy to, about the future of how we might finance these projects. I think a state needs to have an excellent gathering place like a stadium, to have concerts, to have football, to have professional soccer, to have international competitions like the Olympic trials, maybe even part of the Olympic Games someday. We could partner with U.S. venues. We could partner with Asia venues also. It's important for people to aspire to great things. And so having a stadium, I think for any state, at least one, is important. Most states, as you know, have many, many stadiums. So I think we have to have at least one for our keiki. Okay, so that's going to happen. Was I frustrated that they extended the probable start date? Of course, I was mad as heck. And, I have spoken up, let's just say that, behind the scenes, when I wasn't given as much information as I would have liked before that, because I could have forced individuals to come more quickly to the table. But I try to let people work out their differences. We will get the stadium done. In fact, we're going to start demolitioning the stadium this fall. And that's going to be a big deal. We may even have a small celebration to thank people for their patience. Maybe there'll be some fireworks there to show that we're demolishing the stadium. They're going to leave the kind of the two ends, the structural ends, which will save some money. We will build 22,500 seats in phase 1, but phase 2 I hope will get to 35 to 38,000 seats. Depends how much money comes in. There are some major investors, which I believe Stanford has essentially locked down, and they're high on the stadium to get it done. Let's talk, though, about how we might pay for this. There are large questions out there, large social questions that continue to cycle and we haven't had answers to. And I think that the people are going to have to make a decision about this. Marijuana. Okay, legalization of marijuana, which would bring some revenue, say, to healthcare and to infrastructure. I think that that is a question for the people. It's a big enough issue that we should put that on the ballot. And I'm not going to say whether I favor or don't favor these issues just now. We'll talk about that going forward because I don't want to bias people. But I hope the people will get a chance to vote on that. And then, as long as it does something good for society, I can be open to it. Gambling. These are big questions, right? But I want to address big questions as a governor. Do we or don't we want gambling? Well, a lot of people say we should never have gambling in the state of Hawaii because we are too special to have it. But every other state and country are gradually moving to having some form of gambling. If we could control the issue and if people voted for it, if they supported it, let's let them have that opportunity to have the debate and then vote. It appears that about 2/3 of the state is interested in doing some form of gaming. I would only be comfortable with it if monies went to housing, if monies went to the social ills that come with gaming. But that would also pay for large projects, which means not tax dollars, not tourism dollars. So these are large questions which I trust people to take up. I put my trust in our voters, in just all of our citizens to speak up on these matters. And I think that whether it's next year or in the years that follow, we should have those discussions and, really weigh in, because I've watched them linger for too long. Sometimes in Hawaii, we don't make decisions quickly enough. Maybe I make them too quickly for some. That's the ER doc in me, right? But we have to move. We didn't move quickly enough for the last decade on housing. It's why we have a shortage. We didn't move quickly enough on the stadium or the military contracts or homelessness. It's why these challenges really got big. We should have been more aggressive on the emerging challenges that everyone faces. And so I'm going to make up for that lost time by putting it to the voter and making some very deliberate decisions about things like homelessness, about housing. We're under emergency housing rules still. I'm pushing that along because people deserve solutions.
And so with this potential other additional sources of revenue, as well as going out and seeking private donors that you say that will continue for phase 2, how do you negotiate or how do you logistically facilitate doing phase 1 with a set amount of seats in place, these bleacher seats that some fans are not really fired up about, knowing that there's going to be bleacher seats to help save costs, but factoring in that there could be more money later, would that include, after the stadium opens, an additional construction that has to be done to retrofit or to upgrade the existing infrastructure? I mean, how do you imagine that timeline working as more money becomes available?
Well, that's part of the plan. So Stanford, he's made sure that these stages would accommodate that kind of staged building out of the stadium. The first stage, this 22,500 seats plus 10 boxes, would be stage 1. And then, when you have the off season, that's when you amp 5,000 or 10,000 seats, so you don't have downtime. That's what you just need to do if you don't have enough money to immediately build, say, the 38,000 seats, which would be ideal. You can't have it all, right? And that's the challenge here. I want to make sure we're still investing enough in housing so we we just can't commit to $1 billion for a stadium. We have to make sure we have a stadium so we continue to attract investors into the state, and we continue to have a vibrant younger generation coming back. You know, I'm sending my kid off to college. I want her to come back for whatever it's going to be, medical school or law school or a job in some great industry. But they don't come back if you don't have a vibrant culture, a vibrant future. And that's one of the things I view a stadium as. Bleachers, you know, I'm not going to be too particular. I'm certainly not going to micromanage this. I got a pretty big butt, so I'll sit on those bleachers comfortably. So will a lot of people. And then we'll have seats, and we'll have, you know, special seats if people want to pay for them. It will be a wonderful experience no matter what, just having a stadium that's not, you know, so old and that can accommodate these fantastic, fantastic performers which want to come to Hawaii. You know, Bruno Mars wants to be here. You know that just these superstars that are coming out of American Idol, just awesome people. They want to be doing big concerts here, but we don't really have the greatest venues.
I want to ask you about the travels that are upcoming, including dropping your daughter off for college. But first, would love for you to weigh in on the congressional race that's happening. Jarrett Keohokalole has now decided that he's going to challenge Ed Case. Do you plan to endorse anyone in that race? These are both Democrats, of course.
They are. I care about both of these individuals, Ed and Jarrett. I'm not going to get involved in the primary because I think the voters should get to decide. You know, people have been very generous with me. I don't know if there's anyone that's planning on getting involved in my primary. I assume there will be some individual in the general election, and I'll treat them with respect, and we'll go through our thing. But I want the same respect for my colleagues for Congress. I have worked closely with Ed. He's done a lot of great work in so many areas. He's got a lot of experience. You know, I respect him. Jarrett has done great work this past year, for instance, on the insurance reform that we needed to help settle down our insurance costs. He really dives deeply into issues, so he's done a very good job. These are two very highly qualified individuals. I will want someone that will balance the federal government no matter what. I don't think we can afford to continue to have the federal government run completely by one party at the presidential level, the congressional level, and frankly at the judicial level. That's got to be disrupted a little bit. Afterwards, I will campaign for either one of those two who wins the primary.
Let's talk about a little bit about some of the travel, because it includes a trip to the Vatican. If you can share more about some of the upcoming plans for the rest of the summer.
Sure. You know, because I've had a slightly higher profile in recent months, I was asked to serve as the president of CSG, which is the Council for State Governments, and they had a trade mission going over to Italy. The extraordinary part about that is I have an opportunity to talk to the Pope about humanitarian leadership, you know, kind of things that we did in Samoa, what we're doing as we recover from Maui. There's a lot of humanitarian needs in the Indo-Pacific, and so apparently he's eager to talk, and so it's going to be quite cool. I mean, it's one of these, the joke writes itself, you know, what happens when a Mormon first lady, a Jewish governor, and the Pope get together, what do they talk about? I think we're going to talk about how to heal our planet and heal our country, and what we intend to do as the first family, and what we can help the Pope do as he goes out on mercy missions. And together we both, I think, believe that these wars have to end. So I anticipate doing that, and I will tell people now I intend to invite Pope Leo to come to Hawaii and do, you know, a trip to Kalaupapa. I think that's important as the last survivors begin to pass. That's a very sacred place. There have been 2 saints that have come from the experience after, you know, the colony for Hansen's disease, leprosy. And so I'm going to invite the Pope to come to Hawaii in the coming years. I think it would be extraordinary to have him come. He's from Chicago, interestingly, this Pope. So though I understand he's a Bears fan and not a Steeler fan, of course we will welcome him with open arms. And so we're going to talk about humanitarian work. And it's just a great honor to get to meet the Pope. And I'm also going to try to make sure that we have some new opportunities for Hawaii, whether it's some trade opportunities, some manufacturing possibilities are out there. I'm going to meet with some of their parliament, very possibly their president. So it's a unique situation to be doing this, but I do admit seeing the Pope is probably the most extraordinary part. Although, to tell you the truth, I'm much more concerned about dropping Maya off at college than I am about seeing the Pope.
Yeah, tell us about that. We only have a few minutes left, but what are you looking forward to, and what are you kind of, I would imagine, my son's starting first grade and I get teary-eyed. I cannot imagine dropping either one of my children off at college.
Well, I'll just tell you, it goes fast. So yeah, you got beautiful little kids. They're going to be graduating before you know it. And look, I'm excited about all the kids going to UH. It's fantastic. Maya decided to go over to the East Coast to have that experience. And, it does choke you up a little bit because you see that natural transition in life. So they're growing up. They're taking on responsibility. They're going to grow so much. We are encouraging Maya, and Sam for that matter, if they go away to the mainland for college, to come back and do graduate work here or to have their career start here. That's our focus. So we figure it's a 4-year interlude over to the East Coast, and we're going to buy her everything that she needs. And I got a bunch of relatives nearby, and I'm going to tell her to avoid young men until they've proven their worth, right? So these are the things that Dad shares. But yeah, I'm really thinking far less about the trip to the Vatican and much more about Maya's dorm room right now.
Wonderful. We will look forward to hearing a full readout of the trip to the college and also, of course, to the Vatican. Thank you so much. We covered so much ground today. It's always great to catch up with you.
Thank you.
We'll be right back after this. Thanks so much to Governor Josh Green.
From the moment you wake up.
Hawaii News Now brings you the stories that impact your day.
With more on the breaking news, we go live to Casey Lund.
Ready with the push alert? I'm going live. We have an update to the breaking news we brought you this morning on Sunrise.
Okay, guys, as soon as this wraps, toss to Mahia.
And we've been covering this story all day.
Now we go live to Mahia for a new development.
Stand by for breaking news. They just captured the suspect.
That's confirmed?
Yes, sources just confirmed it.
The news you need the moment it breaks.
Here on Hawaii News Now.
Spotlight Now with Yunji Denise and Ryan Kalei-Suchi. Connecting you with newsmakers from throughout our islands. Going in depth with Hawaii's leaders. And taking your questions live. Spotlight Now, where Hawaii comes to talk.
Well, great conversation there with Hawaii Governor, of course, Josh Green, who covered a lot of ground. We, of course, talked about some of the major projects coming up. One of the things the governor spent some time talking about are those military leases and advocating for some of the things that many local residents have expressed concern about when it comes to those military leases.
Yeah, very interesting to hear that the Trump administration really wants to accelerate that timeline. We're expecting some kind of a negotiation to begin in the next few weeks. Talked about Aloha Stadium, of course, the Hawaii Tourism Authority, and the governor's going to go see the Pope.
Yeah, interesting to see how all of that is going to transpire, as well as seeing his daughter off as well in college.
Yeah.
Of course, if you missed any part of this episode, I encourage you to go back to hawaiinewsnow.com to catch the full interview with Josh Green.
Next week, more leaders here in the studio. We'll be talking to Mayor Rick Blangiardi and Council Chair Tommy Waters, focusing on the issues for the city and county of Honolulu.
Thanks. We'll see you here next week. Aloha.
Aloha.